population at the high school, I'm going with Chatham High School, is white. 1.6% is black, 8.8% is Asian, and then we have 3.8% Hispanic. And so if we know that black students make up 1.8%, can you guess how much they make up for those who are suspended the most?
Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share. This is a Black Lives Matter protest in Chatham, New Jersey.
Which means
support the
they're
channel.
almost 2%
Peace.
of the population, but they make up 15% of those who are given outside suspensions, out school suspensions. And so that means if you're black in Chatham, you are, okay, let's do some math here. I'd say it's about 2, so you're almost about 7% more likely to get suspended from school. The national average, do you know what the national average is? If you're black in a school, it's multiracial. Yeah, I don't know this. Y'all need to look up some statistics, folks. Actually, the national average is 3.5%. So the national average is 3.5%, but here in Chatham, you're 7 times more likely. But yeah, all of you are here, right, for Black Lives. So that means that all of you every last one of you here, need to be showing up at the school board meeting and demanding. And someone doesn't like the word demand? Is that what I heard here? That demand was an offensive word? That's interesting. Because if it were your child, if it were white children who made up a smaller percent, but they were the majority of those who were suspended, you would be demanding change. So you need to see these children just as much as you see your children. It was interesting, I remember it was a board meeting, it was this well-known board meeting in Newark years ago when the superintendent was doing all sorts of different things to the district, and one of the parents said, "Don't you want for our child what you want for your child? Don't you want for your child what black parents want for their child too?" Right? And so many of you are here, and it's interesting because I sat here and I listened to a lot of the youth as they were speaking, and for me, quite frankly, I am tired of hearing these stories, because no matter where I go, it's the same story over and over and over again. And then people go home, they come to these events, and they pat themselves on the back, and then they go home and rest and go back to sleep. There's a well-known, someone I know, he's a white anti-racist organizer, Jeff Hitchcock, who talks about this proverbial table of justice. And he says that when white folks come to the table, they're really coming because they want love and community, because they don't get love and community in their spaces. Right? So they come, they like to be in our, there's so much about what we do and how we are, that they want to be in our community and want to be in our spaces. But when black folks come to the table, they're coming because they want justice. However, if you're not helping them seek justice, then you're in an abusive relationship with them, because you're coming to take and not stand in solidarity. And so I'm also going to quote, because I think Layla Watson, who was an Australian Aboriginal woman, who also Australia is another one of the countries that learned an apartheid system from us. We're the greatest, number one. We're number one, United States. And the words are, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let us work together. I actually really, there's no need to clap, because I think those words need to sit very deeply. And I thank you for applauding, but I think they need to sit very deeply within you. Because if you understand, and I'll repeat it again. Sure, absolutely. She says, if you come here, this is Layla Watson, If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, there's an interconnectedness in our liberations. If you've come here because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let us work together, right? So clearly, this is not work that we need to be doing all alone. You're not coming in some paternalistic charity, saviorish type of way, but you're coming because your liberation is bound up in mine. You have to understand that living in this segregated and apartheid community is not liberating, is not good for your own well-being. So here's what I want to say also. For many folks that come into this space, like I said, it's like you're coming because there's no mutual relationship, right? And the mutual relationship is this interconnectedness that we need to have, right? It's more than just sitting and enjoying talks, and sometimes I feel like, I think part of my headache, I had a headache earlier today, and I think part of my headache is I'm sort of tired of coming to these things and talking, and then not having any action followed behind it. And so when I could actually be doing something different at home or doing some real work in organizing, I'm not an entertainer, I'm not a comedian. Sometimes I feel like it's all for show, and I'm not any of those things, right? And so these young girls, even they were bearing their souls and so vulnerable. And what a pity it would be if people, every last one of you here, did nothing when you went back home. Which is partially why I was also maybe resistant, and my body might have been telling me that maybe this is not worth me having a conversation here. So I'm going to talk about these 3 concepts, right? And partly it's what we want to know, and we don't have to hear an answer from anybody here, because I think we'll still continue the work whether you come along or not. But we need to know, and there are 3 things that we want to talk about, is these identities that people have claimed, or they've given themselves. But are you a savior? Are you an ally? Or are you a co-conspirator? Now, we definitely don't want no saviors up in here. Unless you Jesus. But ain't nobody here Jesus, I don't think, right? Okay. So you see saviors come rushing in on their proverbial white horses to save those poor black people and other marginalized folks who are experiencing oppression. Saviors are driven by guilt and shame and want to take the lead. Often we'll find saviors putting safety pins on, maybe posting a black square on Instagram, or going over to Africa to save those black children, right? Because they're so poor and destitute, and help them out, or doing some volunteerism, right? Isn't that what they do? Volunteerism? And so, because it comes from a paternalistic perspective, I have something that you don't have, and here I am up top, and here you are at the bottom. There's no mutual relationship. There's a power dynamic that's playing out, right? There's no mutual relationship. And also saviors, the thing about saviors is no one asked you to come. They just come anyway. They just be going. Oh, I'm gonna go to Uganda. Well, I'm gonna go to Haiti. They didn't invite you, but you're gonna go. Well, I'm gonna go to Newark and pass out this and this, but did they invite you to come? They do not know how to take direction from black and marginalized people because they have all the answers in a paternalistic, poor children kind of way. Saviors take up too much space and come into organizing spaces, not with humility, but with a sense of entitlement. Saviorism is ultimately about assuaging guilt. It's about self-medicating a wounded heart. But But because saviors aren't in authentic community with Black and other marginalized people, they do not know how to be with us and end up causing more harm and damage. Are you a savior, an ally, or a co-conspirator? Allies, on the other hand, are the people who come to us, Black folks, when no one is looking or listening. When people are saying things about us on Facebook, Tandy, they'll enter our DMs quietly, not publicly, to support you, because they'll enter it quietly, because they don't want nobody else to see. They support you. They want to hide behind the DMs and express outrage. Oh, they're so outraged about what's happening, but they only do it privately. Now, I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to ask anyone to out themselves, but Black folks, just give me a yes if you can feel me, right? If you know what I'm talking about. You've got some folks that are privately, it might even happen at work, right? Something happens at work, you see your boss, and somebody's like, oh, that was messed up what they did to you, but no one's supporting you publicly, right? So there's nothing wrong with feeling sadness, and you all should feel sadness when you see people killed, publicly killed the way that they are killed and murdered. You should feel sadness when you see all these Black kids being suspended and mistreated in school. Or you should feel sadness when you live in a predominantly white community, ain't no diversity here. That's sad. There should be some sadness with that. Absolutely. That's not normal. That's actually not natural. What has been manufactured here is a manufacturing of whiteness. That's not natural. It really isn't. And so you should feel some sadness and anger. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with seeing distinct sanctioned killings of killing of Black people by police. And I know someone mentioned here that, like, they think that this, for me, I'm an abolitionist. I'm a defund the police. I'm a let's push these resources towards community care. Because what did we do before police were here? If we know the history around policing, we know that they were initially started during slavery, right? They were the slave catchers. And we also, if for white folks that are here, that are Irish or Italian, if you know your history around how you became white, we would know that being part of white, being that process for you to become white, meant that you also had to join those slave patrols. That, if you don't know that history, yes, you'll continue to think that this is okay. And so their mission hasn't changed that much. They're just not as open about it. We ain't catching no slaves, but we just go and arrest a lot of Black people and incarcerate a lot of them. Right? That's the history. But we need to think about and create a world where we do not need policing and we do not need prisons. That's where we need to be going. Right? We need to create a world that'll help us think about creating a safety net, a community of love and support. That when mental health issues are shown, like what's the young guitarist here talking about, they didn't even know how to deal with his father who came back from the military. Do we know what happens to people when they watch other people die, when you're forced to kill other people in another world, in another country, and then you come back? You can't come back normal. Of course you got some issues going on, but how do we deal with that? We need to deal with it from a perspective of care, not violence and policing, right? And so those were the allies. Like when I think about the allies, those are the ones who just support us. They're like not open about supporting us. They're more quiet about it, more subversive about it. Those are the allies. And they also too think that they're coming to help. They don't see themselves as being their liberation tied up with my liberation and my children's liberation and the children here. Allies will send private texts to individual people and friends, often to provide some emotional support because they feel guilt and shame for all that they're witnessing right before their eyes. Many will say they feel terrible about all the injustice and even may have a good heart. However, that good heart and good intentions won't change the conditions for their black friends. In fact, their silence, as Bishop Desmond Tutu teaches us, means that they have chosen the side of the oppressor. And what Audre Lorde teaches us, that our silence will not protect us, and it will surely not change our conditions. It explicitly maintains it. So your silence explicitly maintains oppression. It keeps the structures in place. Are you a savior, an ally, or a co-conspirator? Things you need to consider. But to be a co-conspirator is to be grounded in core anti-racist principles. It is about working collectively in solidarity, side by side, in co-liberation, right? Side by side with black people because of the inherent interconnectedness of our freedoms. Co-conspirators approach the work in humility, collective liberation, principled accountability, and conviction. Co-conspirators will step outside of their false sense of comfort, actively educate themselves, and take action while being accountable to black people and other people of color. As long as black people aren't free in this country, none of us are free. You may get some goodies for your silence, which contributes to anti-blackness and racism, but is all a ploy to prevent us from being able to align with black people and see that our liberations are being inherently linked. So the goodies you get is all a ploy. It's to make you comfortable, not to ever do anything, which is why it's so easy for us to just go back to normal, go back to sleep, right? So again, if you've come here to help me, then you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let's work together.
Yeah, this is a Black Lives Matter protest in Chatham, New Jersey. The speaker is a public school teacher in Chatham, New Jersey, in the public school system in the US here. So don't forget to subscribe and like this page here. Subscribe for more. Support the channel. Peace.
Were bought